kicking off the 2024 MLB Draft with discussion of some potential first-round picks out of the SEC, and we brought in an expert to talk about it.
You are Locked On MLB Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on in to Locked On MLB Prospects, your home for all things minor league baseball. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby, award-winning baseball writer and podcaster. Thank you for making this your first listen every single day. We're probably part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. And today's episode is made possible by our friends at Jace Medical. Take care of yourself and your loved ones when you purchase a Jace case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50-plus infections. Get yours today at jacemedical.com. That's J-A-S-E medical.com. I put out a survey the end of the week last week and said, hey, we didn't do enough MLB draft stuff in 2023. Do you want us to get started early? And it was an emphatic yes. Prospectors, you guys want draft content. I'm going to give the people what they want. And so we were talking about where do you start with college baseball with potential number one, first round picks, number one overall picks. And I said, you got to start in the SEC. So we're going to bring on an expert. I've got today Mark Etheridge, writer for D1Baseball.com, host of the Highway to Hoover podcast. You can follow him on Twitter at Mark Etheridge. But I feel like one of the foremost experts right now on college baseball and especially the SEC and the talent in this conference. So, Mark, thank you for coming in. Thanks for giving us a few minutes of your time.
Absolutely, Lindsay. Glad to talk to you tonight.
Yes, sir. And I want to start off by kind of giving you some credit. We sat in a press box for 2 games last year for LSU versus Auburn, and the conversation for everybody was Paul Skeens, Dylan Cruz, and and the top of this year's draft. But you kept trying to talk to me about Florida two-way player Jac Caglianone, and I had to admit, hey, he's a 24 eligible. I don't know enough about him as I should, and he's the story right now of college baseball, what he could be as a two-way player. Is he, you think, good enough to be a number one overall pick if his 2024 season goes the way Florida thinks it's going to?
It's his to lose. I really believe that. And, if this were 5 years ago, the pre-Ohtani era, we would be trying to find, is he a better hitter or is he a better pitcher? But I think in today's world, it takes a special talent, but I think he's going to get a shot to do both. And, there've been a lot of two-way players over the years, and, usually you have to choose, Brendan McKay got a shot to do both. There's been a few who have, but it's so challenging. It's such a time commitment. But, in talking to him before, he's been doing this his whole life, right? So he did it. He doesn't really want to choose. He wants to be, right now he's the college version of Ohtani, and he wants to continue that through. And when you look at his skill set, I am not a professional scout. I am not a general manager.
Right.
But I tell you what, you could take my wife, who really doesn't like baseball, and she could sit in the stands and listen to the ball come off of his bat, and she go, yeah, we need one of those, right? Because that's the kind of talent he is, right? Mm-hmm. He's a 6'5", 235-pound NFL tight end looking guy. He's just massive, and the ball just sounds different. Exit velocity, he's talking about, 115, 116. He said he had a 118. It's just ludicrous what he's capable of, and really last year he swung at everything, right? Mm-hmm. He did not take walks, and part of that was, he was a pitcher, right, who also hit. So he's really, I guess, immature compared to some of his peers from a hitting standpoint. But oh my goodness, all the ability in the world, and as he continues to get more reps, he's special, man. He can do whatever he wants from a skill set standpoint. And then you talk about on the mound, and there's only so many people in the world who can throw 98, 99 miles an hour, and he's one of them. And he pitched last year, and he was a Sunday starter all year. Sunday starters pit. That's the third starter for a team in the weekend, and he was. He struggled with control. He struggled with command. He really didn't place the ball, but he didn't get hit. Okay, his problems came with walking batters, and then wild pitches and things. And the merry-go-round started. That was really his deal. And what they've tried to do in this offseason, and I'll see him, this weekend, is really tighten up his delivery to try to address some of that, to be more repeatable, to be more consistent, because the velo is there. Right. And the thought is he'll be able to maintain that velo and be have a more repeatable motion, which is going to, obviously just elevate him more. Right. Yeah. So but honestly, he could do either, or he could do both. And there's just so few people out there. I think, honestly, he's a can't miss, because if he doesn't make it as a pitcher, he's still a hell of probably the best prospect as a hitter. And then if he doesn't make it as a hitter, he's still atop of he's still a first rounder on the mound. So it's just so low risk. I think unless there's, something unfortunate happens this spring. He's going to go one overall. I don't see how he doesn't.
Yeah. And to try to contextualize some of what he did last year. So 71 games on the mound, everybody. 323, 389, 737, which I know we joke on the show that sometimes college / lines sound a little bit ridiculous, but 33 home runs. He set the BB Core homer record, single season program record for RBIs, for total bases. And you mentioned he's very aggressive. 40.8% chase rate. So obviously that's something that has to get worked on. We've talked about that, but it's a special package on at the plate, and then on the mound. How much do you think that issues with command and control? It was 55 walks, so 6.6 per 9. How much of that is, I guess, expected on a guy that's coming off of, had Tommy John in high school? Right. Last year was his first year on the mound since he was a junior. How much of that is to be expected, and how much of that you think was just a side effect of having that old delivery and some of the issues that come along with something like that?
Those are great points. Because you're right. The reason he's even in college is he had the injury, right? He would be a pitcher, and probably only a pitcher, because he only started hitting at Florida because he was too injured to pitch, and they let him DH a little bit because he was just bombing balls in batting practice. The next thing you know,
it worked.
He's an everyday guy as a hitter. So, but yeah, that's a good point. Sometimes we're too hard and we don't think about the journey that the player got to even get to be that successful. Florida was one of the best teams in the country. They made the College World Series finals last year, really close to winning the whole thing. And he was their number 3 pitcher, and they had some really good guys ahead of him. So I really think that all the focus is on him and seeing how he handles that. Because last year he had a little bit of focus, but he kind of, he shot up quickly during the year. Well, now he's had the whole off season, everybody talking about how you're going to be the number 1 guy. People like us talking about, hey, all of this is out there for you. How do you handle that? And some people flourish in that environment, and I think he's going to be a guy who's going to embrace that. That's just from the few conversations I've had with him, seems like he's going to be able to rise to that occasion, and certainly there's so much upside for a guy with his skill set.
Yeah, and like we mentioned earlier, you'll see him this Friday. So follow Mark on Twitter at Mark Etheridge. All of the writing is going to be at d1baseball.com. It's if you're big into college baseball, the draft, anything like that, it's an incredibly valuable resource. In just a second, I want to kind of look at some of the other position players that are going to threaten for first round status in the draft. There's a lot of notable names. We'll do that next right here on Locked On MLB Prospects. Back to our conversation with Mark in just a minute, but first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Jace Medical. The Jace case is a personalized emergency medication kit that contains 5 essential antibiotics that treat the most common and deadly bacterial infections. And based on your unique situations, maybe you're an international traveler, maybe you're somebody who likes to go camping, maybe you're just concerned about being prepared at home for some sort of natural disaster, you can customize your case and add additional life-saving medications based on your unique needs. There's dozens of add-on medications. You choose the medications that fit best for you and your family. Jace is continuously working to expand their medication offerings. For instance, they just added an anti-parasitic as an option for the Jace case. So go to jacemedical.com, enter code LOCKEDON at checkout for a $20 discount on your order. That's promo code LOCKEDON at Jace Medical, JASE Medical.com. Welcome back into Locked On MLB Prospects. Lindsay Crosby, Mark Etheridge of D1Baseball.com, talking probable SEC first rounders. And when you mention guys in the SEC and position players, a name comes up in Tommy White, Tommy Tanks, right? Transfers in from NC State to LSU and has a really good year last year as far as, doesn't have to be the primary piece of that LSU team, of that national championship team, because you have Dylan Cruz, but can slot in and really do a lot of work at the plate. Bats .374 with a .725 slugging, again with the college slash lines, 24 home runs. But I noticed when kind of digging into some of the numbers, he had a similar situation to Caglianone where a really high chase, 36.7%. But to me, it felt like he did a much better job at keeping the strikeout rate under control. He struck out 41 times. It's like 13%. Is that something where... was it where he was in the lineup and getting pitches to hit because they were worried about pitching to the guys around him? Or is it just he's aggressive but also has the batter's eye to not chase those waste pitches you see a lot in college?
He's an advanced hitter. I mean, he's 21, but he doesn't look like it at the plate. He's one of these guys. He's not overly athletic. He's not a bad athlete, but he's a little thick, kind of like myself. And I think he's able to, he's able to really stay in the zone. He's quick through the zone and covers it well. I do think that, the question on him is going to be, where does he play? Right. He played third for LSU. He was serviceable there. I think a lot of people project him to move to first. I think worst case he's a DH, but that bat will play at DH. I do think he's a big leaguer. It's just a question of projectability. Where do you see him? I don't think he's an outfielder. I think he's probably going to end up at first. He's not an overly tall guy, right? So he's not the prototypical like Caglianone. Where does he play? He's the prototypical first baseman because you really got to work to throw it over his head, right? So with Tommy White, he's a normal size guy. So he's I do think that his bat, though, he's certainly mid first round, maybe higher if things go his way.
Yeah, and that kick out from first to third isn't something I feel like you see a ton in college. But when Trey Morgan's at first base, there's it's kind of hard to move probably the best defensive first baseman in college off of first base. Some other guys who I feel like have a little bit better defense and can be in that conversation. Charlie Condon of UGA. He's played some first base as well, but played both corner outfield. I feel like in both his college season last year and with the collegiate national team, he's done a really good job of kind of showing he can hit for average, he can hit for power, and he's a pretty well-rounded player both offensively and defensively, right?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he was a kid who came in and physically was just not ready. Okay. So he redshirted as a freshman, which,
is rare.
The type of guys we're talking about don't redshirt. Okay.
Yeah. Tommy White did not redshirt.
Right. He did not. He was hitting tanks his first few weeks. And he worked on his body, and, he was pretty thin, and he put on, I don't know, maybe 20 pounds or so of good weight. And because of that, he came back as a sophomore, and he was, a redshirt freshman, second year, and just, just really blossomed. And the question is now, he's had a second year in the weight room. What does he look like now? I mean, he was still pretty thin, even though he put on that weight. But he's got a big frame, and I do think he can continue to grow, continue to add strength, and he's already got the hit tool, right? So as he continues to fill out and mature, I mean, that power is just gonna continue to come. So with him, he's a corner outfielder, I think. Arm's okay, but with his size, he's fine at first base too, right? Because I think his bat's going to play there. So again, I would think those are, we talked about those two, those with he and White, that I would consider them kind of peers at this point, kind of mid first round, heading into the spring.
Yeah, it feels like White probably has the edge as far as power production, what he's been able to do. Condon has the defensive versatility, and a lot of that, like you said, projectability too. Yeah. And a lot of that, I think too, will depend on what he's done in the offseason as far as size. Defensively, he looked to be pretty good from what I got to see of him in the outfield, but I'd be concerned if there was too much speed lost as he were to physically develop. And so I think that's a good, you have the corner outfield positions now. Somebody that I remember talking to Chris Lemonis about him a little bit, Dakota Jordan at Mississippi State, draft eligible sophomore. His birthday is in like May. So he'll only be a sophomore, but he'll be old enough for the draft. Fantastic bat speed. And to me, looked like a guy who was really, really disciplined at the plate, and just has done a very good job of understanding what he can do with a pitch versus just selling out for power in every at bat. What does he need to do in 2024 to get into that first round conversation as a draft eligible sophomore?
Yeah, it's consistency. I mean, he came in as a freshman last year. I mean, and physically he looks like an NFL running back, right? I mean, he is put together. Okay, so good speed, obviously great power, hit some of the longest home runs, that you're going to see. But but he had to kind of figure out, SEC pitching, and he's not unique there. Right. So as the year went on, they stuck with him. He was able to stay in the lineup, and I don't know, about mid-season it clicked, man. And once it clicked, he was the guy who came up in the clutch situation and got the hit, right? And it wasn't always a home run, although sometimes it was. But he was able to get that, and I think it's that, that confidence, from being so, such a physical, having a physical advantage, over most of the population. I think that's certainly something that allowed him to excel in these clutch situations. And I'm really eager because, the latter half of last year, he was such a different player than early. And, let's look and see how he, takes that next level. I'm eager to see how he approaches this year. And it's, with anyone who's just so physically talented, right? It's repeatability and having that consistency because all the tools are there, right? And mindset.
You can definitely see like the raw power is there when you look. I mean, 10 home runs, 20 extra base hits, but the bat speed is fantastic. And it's, just the mechanics of it. It's very smooth. Like you said, he's a very, very good athlete. You can see that. It's almost unnerving to see somebody that size running that well in the outfield. Right. And like it kind of makes you blink for a second and be shocked from a press box that he's that fluid in the outfield. I think I wasn't necessarily too impressed with the arm, but it feels like, at least for now, he's somebody you could keep in center field if you wanted to. And then there's the question, as he continued to finish developing and maturing, would he have to move to a corner? But he probably the first player on this list that feels like he's a center fielder if he wants to be, as he gets into the professional ranks.
Yeah, well, certainly the speed is there. And, I'm like you. I think the arm is TBD, but all the other tools are there.
Yeah.
He's got it all. And plus he's got the clutch gene, right? And then you can't teach that. And it's just, it's there or it's not. And he certainly had it last year.
It doesn't show up on the stat line, but it's definitely something you pick up when you're there in person and you see it. a guy that neither one of us has seen a ton of, but somebody who I'm excited to get transfer into the conference from Stanford, Braden Montgomery at Texas A&M. Something batted 336, 461, 611 last year. Just fantastic, and a good get by Jim Schlossnagle to get him into Texas A&M. Have you heard anything about whether he's going to give pitching a shot at Texas A&M, or is he just going to be a position player and know that he's got a cannon of an arm that he can use in right field?
Yeah, to this point, there's been nothing decided, but he's such a weapon in the outfield, and I do think it's going to depend on how much do they need him. Because last year's A&M team, they were short on the mound. They could have used a guy like him. There's no way you would have that arm and not use it.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see, do they need it, right? Because there is a risk. You're giving up something. You're giving up time. You're giving up reps, cage time, all of those things in order to be a two-way guy. Is the juice worth the squeeze? And that's what they need to decide. And it's not just based on him, right? I think it's based on the other guys around him. I do think from a skill set standpoint, he's what you want. He could play center field. He's got the arm. He's probably going to end up in right just because that arm is special. But then offensively, he can be a three-hole guy for you and project there going forward. I mean, he's one of the better hitters in the country, and I think, assuming his projection, continues and he adjusts to College Station life, he's. I mean, it's all laid out for him. He could be a top 10 pick.
That third year going into the SEC, it's always interesting to see what the stat line does as they adjust to that little higher level of competition. He did a good job at dropping the swing and miss every year, just kind of from what I looked at and what I saw. And so I'm curious to see how he adjusts to the SEC.
Fascinating player.
Yeah. Just there's a lot to unpack there. And in just a minute, I want to talk about some of these arms. There's a ton of fantastic pitchers in the SEC, like always, and we'll get to those guys next right here on Locked On MLB Prospects. Getting to the pitchers in just a minute, but first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Ibotta. How does free Thanksgiving sound? Because this year, Ibotta is here to give you cash back and help make sure your Thanksgiving table is complete. Starting November 1st, for the fourth year in a row, Ibotta is giving 100% cash back on your Thanksgiving feast. Just add the offers in the app to redeem for everything you need to make your Thanksgiving dinner. All you have to do is shop at your favorite retailers and upload your receipt. If you're not familiar, Ibotta gives you cash back on hundreds of grocery items, from produce to personal care to pantry goods. You can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. Other apps give you points. With Ibotta, you get real cash back that you can cash out to your bank account, or you can get a gift card, or you can have it sent to you via PayPal. You can also earn cash back on hundreds of online brands and retailers when you start your purchasing journey with Ibotta, including Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, whatever it might be. So download the Ibotta app now. Use code MLB to get 100% cash back on your Thanksgiving dinner starting November 1st. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app and use code MLB. That's Ibotta, IBOTTA, in the Google Play or App Store and use code MLB. Final segment of the Friday show. Lindsay Crosby, Mark Etheridge, D1Baseball.com, talking about potential first rounders in the SEC in 2024. And you're traveling around the SEC this fall, going to check out a lot of schools, a lot of fall ball and things like that. And we talked a couple weeks, you're going to get to go see LSU, and they've got a couple guys we're looking at, whether it's potential or just what they did last year. Luke Holman, Thatcher, Hurd, a couple different arms that could push their way into not only the first round, but probably the top 10. What are you looking for when you see a pitcher in fall ball versus in the season, as far as what stands out to you?
Yeah, I think that the first thing is you're not getting a very long look at them.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe 2 innings if you're lucky. A lot of times it's 1. So it's how they compete. It's how well they command. And if you're fortunate enough to, if somebody gets on base against against these guys, a lot of times it doesn't happen. But how do they respond? When it's they get a little bit of traffic on the bases. I think that's the thing, and the other thing looking for is just the other guys around them, how they interact, those kinds of what can you pick up from just interaction with your teammates, attitude, those kinds of things. And then the last thing is what role will they have on the staff? I mean, we're pretty sure these two guys that we're talking about are going to be starters. With everyone, you're not always. Maybe they're going to be a back end guy. Maybe they're going to be a starter. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're going to be somewhere in between. And so sometimes you kind of get a feel for how they're going to be used by watching them and how some of the others evolve during the fall.
Yeah, and kind of looking at those two guys, it feels like Hurd as of now probably has the higher ceiling. I like. Obviously, the fastball velocity is great. He can run it up to 96 or so, but he's got that big curveball, tons of spin on a slider, and it's something where just a little more consistency, and you're looking at potentially 2 to 3 plus pitches, whereas Luke Holman's kind of just that fastball curveball guy. How much do you see these guys in fall sometimes prioritizing, hey, let me work on this third pitch against somebody different versus just going out and focusing on getting outs? Like, how much of this is a projection look?
Yeah, it depends on how confident they are in their spot. Okay. So with Hurd, he was really an enigma last year. He had moments even early in the year where he was really good, and then he had a stretch where he couldn't get anybody out, and we wondered if he was even going to be part of the plan, for LSU postseason, because could they trust him? But they kept running him out there, and it clicked. And in the postseason, I mean, he was their third best pitcher, and that's a really good staff. So a couple of first rounders in there.
Paul Skeens was in that staff. I mean, it's a brilliant staff.
Right. So I do think that, it's which version of him do you get?
Right.
I think that's where I want to see. With Luke Holman, he was at Alabama last year, and with the coaching change, he moved on to LSU, and it's a big league curveball, and his velo's 93 to 95. It's good. It's not it's not like some of these guys we're talking about, but he understands how to pitch, and he's that, I don't know, that mature pitcher who just understands pitchability at an earlier age than a lot of these college kids we're seeing. So while his upside's not as high, his production at LSU with all that run support that you're expecting should be pretty good, right? So I think he may be the Friday guy, right? Because you kind of know what you got with him, and then Hurd is there. Maybe take a little pressure off of him and let him pitch Saturdays, and see if they can become that two-headed monster. Yeah, and they've got other guys. I mean, Cam Johnson is the freshman, right? Who's 6'5", 250, and probably the best pitcher to make it to campus, out of high school. And LSU, I think their pitching is going to be better than their hitting this year, at least in projection, and that offense is going to be good. So, if you're an LSU hater, that's because they won the whole thing last year. I mean, you just gonna have to suck it up, because it's going to be more of the same.
It's not going to change for a while. It's definitely not. But you mentioned pitchability in there, and anybody who knows me knows I love a good pitchability lefty. And Hagen Smith at Arkansas feels like a combination of a pitchability guy, but also just like has really good tools. Gets good velocity on the fastball. How hurt is he by not having, I guess, a conventional delivery, kind of having that herky-jerky, deceptive delivery? Like, is it something where it's going to be a little more accepted now in the modern age than it used to be, or does he need to calm that down a bit, you think, to really hit that first-round status?
He's got to throw more strikes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it boils down to. I mean, he was their best pitcher, but he rarely made it 5 innings. And that was a team that needed length from him. They had some injuries, and they just didn't have enough depth. So just as like you said, he's super talented, so much to like with him. But I think part of what you're talking about, some of that unconventional approach hurt him,
Yeah.
from a, just from being able to go deeper in games. Maybe that's not as big a deal, pro ball, but because they're gonna break him down and build him back up, right? But
Yeah.
the talent is there, and he's a really fun pitcher to watch. He competes his ass off. I mean, he's one of my favorites.
The thing that impresses me is, I mean, I've seen him throw at least 5 different pitches, and to
Hmm.
see a young pitcher that willing to go to a fourth or fifth best option to get the out is something that, like, that's a mental kind of, I don't say block, but that's something a lot of professional pitchers struggle with understanding and kind of saying, okay, I can't just blow the fastball by everybody. I have to do something a little bit different. And I think that's a mindset that's hard to teach. And so that's something he has in his favor. I also wonder if maybe trying to throw 5 different pitches could
Yeah,
be some of the reason why you have a whip of 1.4.
yeah, you don't want to get beat with your fifth best pitch.
Yeah.
So it's part of that. Yeah, it's great to give different looks, but they have to be productive, or it's kind of why are you doing this?
Talking about getting good looks, you went to Auburn versus Alabama recently, and I know that last year they didn't get much out of Ben Hess because of injury.
Right.
But what they got looked to be pretty good. I mean, 36 innings. I think he walked like 8 guys, struck out almost 50. And then obviously before that was really good. What's your like going into 2024? What does Ben Hess need to do to, if he decides to declare, to be that first round guy?
He needs, well, first off, he did not have Tommy John surgery, although there were, when
Rumors.
you have the elbow injury, and sometimes you assume the worst, right?
Yeah.
So, but he did not. He's come back. He's already throwing. He is supposed to throw an inning against Florida State in their Alabama's second exhibition game Saturday.
Okay.
So that'll be good. I think you want to see the velo, and
Mhm.
you want to see, to have some confidence that he's healthy. And I think the other part with him is that he didn't go as deep in games. He didn't show the control. Really wasn't the problem. It was more command,
Mhm.
and I think that's that next step he's got to make. He didn't pitch a lot as a freshman. He was kind of a midweek guy who kind of got into, got a larger role as the season went on, but he didn't throw a lot of big innings. So coming in last year, it was, he was one of the guys. Holman was on that staff. Grayson Hitt, was
Mhm.
a nice draft pick, was on that staff, and so this year he's really, he's the leader, right? They have a guy who's a 2025 draft, Riley Quick, and he's throwing 98 and then 92, 93 mile an hour slider. I mean, it's hard. Everything is hard with him.
Jeez.
And if Hess can you know be that experienced, proven guy,
Mhm.
and I mean, that to me, that's what I would want to see. Health, and can he continue that production that he was on, but can he kind of elevate it just a little bit?
Yeah. All right. If our listeners who are draft obsessed want to know more about these guys, want to follow you, want to read everything that you write, how can they find you, follow you, love you, all that stuff?
Yeah, thanks. D1baseball.com. We are the college baseball site. Your home for scores, stats. We have all the advanced stats from 643. We have um, features. We do scouting. I mean, you name it, schedules, anything that you need to keep up, follow the sport. And also, Joe Healy and I have a separate section, we call it, on the site called SEC Extra. And if you're an SEC fan, it's a can't miss. You're going to get all these kinds of details that you can't really get anywhere else. So that's my elevator pitch.
We talk on the show a lot about like it is vital to pay for good baseball content, and folks, I can tell you as a longtime subscriber of D1Baseball.com, it is great content. SEC, the additions there, the Highway to Hoover podcast is a must listen every week, and so absolutely great stuff. Mark, thank you for your time, and welcome back anytime you want to come on.
Yeah, enjoyed it, man. It's always fun talking ball.